More important than the fact that there isn't a chronological order in the Torah, the lack of chronological order shouts the idea that the Torah is not a history book. The Torah is a relevant current document. Good, reviewed, you all got it. Next, very important, the patriarchs, the Avot and Imaot, are not role models and they're not life coaches. Again, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they are not role models for us, nor are they life coaches. They are us. We are them. And we need to keep that in mind, that when we read a story about any of them, we're essentially reading what can and invariably, one way or the other, will be our life story. Okay, very, very important. I don't have a role model in Avot. I don't have a life coach in Tzara. What I have is a mini me or a maxi me. I have someone who got the greatest opportunities to reach the greatest heights, whose life experiences I will live in one way or another. So again, there isn't necessarily a chronological order because it doesn't relate to a book about current life. In current life, I'm going to be sliding back and forth constantly between past, present, and future as I consider new opportunities, as I weigh them against what was the area, the issue of a time chronology in a life guidance book has really very little merit. So the Torah is vibrant, dynamic, current today. Two, the people who are highlighted, as we know, not everything in their life is highlighted. Only a handful of the life experiences of someone who lived 130 years or 170 years or whatever numbers of years these great men and women lived. Certain parts of their lives are highlighted, not all, to bring us in this relevant current life guidance book to bring me the events in their lives that will be in my life. Again, not as somebody I learn from, but somebody I step into. They are me and I am them. Good. The next core concept to build tonight on is a reminder of the core elements that define our Avot and Imaot. And you all know them very well, so we'll just review them briefly. Hesed, Abraham, Gevurah, Yitzhak, and Emet, Yaakov. Let's just review them quickly. Chesed we know, and all of this relates to what we're going to delve into tonight and what we're going to take from it. So we're just setting the platform now. We're just setting the introduction. Chesed we know is the ability to look at everything in the world as absolutely interconnected. Chesed is not doing a nice thing. We know that in language, it's used that way. Chesed is not simply that. Chesed means I'm doing a nice thing because I understand that everybody's connected in the world and everything is connected in the world. And therefore, if somebody's in pain, I have a responsibility. So, and it also applies, it applies interpersonally to me and everything around me, chesed. And this is what Abraham caught. And that's why he surmised from this that there can only be one God with his arms around it all because everything is connected. So if everything is connected, if it's one giant mosaic, then it has to be one creator, one mover, one mind. So the key premise that Abraham discovered and built his life on and was able by doing so to launch all of the world's religions from is this notion of chesed, which is absolute interconnectedness. And again, it relates to everything around me and everything inside of me. Nothing happens outside of me in a vacuum, and nothing happens inside of me in a vacuum. If a tree falls in the forest, very famously said, it has ramifications. If I think something, if I do something, if nobody hears it or nobody sees it, it has ramifications. It lives, it exists, even if nobody ever knew about it but me. Good so far? Yeah? Okay. Zeke? Yeah? You're good. Okay, good. Okay. And unmute if you have thoughts or challenges or questions.
I have a question. Why aren't they role models? Why are
Okay, beautiful. So Jamie is asking, why aren't they role models? The term role model means you do something and I watch what you do and learn from it, which is a beautiful thing. Life coach is less than a role model, although another very important position to have in a person's life. A life coach says, I may or may not ever do what you do, but I have whatever wisdom I have to guide you through what you do. And those are both very valuable things. But the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu built our reality is Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and their wives and their children are neither of those. They're personifications of me, of us. What they lived is what I will live. That's the point. They lived it exactly, not exactly. I will live overwhelmingly the things in life that they went through. One person has a crisis of faith. Abraham has a crisis of faith at a very, very senior age because he has to destroy, he's told to destroy his son's life. We won't have one like that, but the point is that everybody will have a crisis of faith. Everybody will have an issue of complexity with children. So that's highlighted in our Avot and Imaot. So that's why, yeah, Sarah?
I have a question about Abraham, never to undermine him at all, but when he was faced with the Akedah, our Torah is filled with morality and kindness and goodness. Now he's faced with something that's really not a moral thing to do, which gives other nations now, he was put against faith and morality. Now gives other nations to say, oh, our God told us to wipe out the Jews. We want to wipe out the Jews. That's our faith.
Right. Okay. You know, anybody can twist anything the way they want. You're absolutely right. And they will, and they do, and they do. The story of Akedat Yitzchak and how Abraham approached it is a story about believing in something even when all of my beliefs should have been shattered. So I'm not going to address your point directly because it's a separate conversation, but I want you to think about this point. I want you to think about this point. What the reason that the Torah recorded the story of Akedat Yitzchak, it could have either God could have never made it happen, or he could have made it happen but not recorded it, right? Didn't have to be recorded in the Torah. To your point, people are going to be misinformed by it. So it didn't have to be recorded in the Torah. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it happen and recorded it is because he wanted everybody to understand. I'm not going to get into the details of it. You're right. The details have to be teased through. But he wanted everybody to understand that there may be a point in a person's life where morality and everything that the person thought his or her life and beliefs were based on just got trashed. It's hard, right? It's hard. But guess what? Abraham got through it and Yitzchak got through it, right? And the Torah is telling us, you know, all of you guys, you may have one of these episodes too, where you thought you built your life, your whole life on certain values, and you thought you established yourself, and you thought the ground was firm under your feet, and guess what? Whatever you thought was just crashed to the ground. And now, do you get up in the morning? Can you think? Can you see straight? Somebody, you know, a survivor of the Holocaust, can he get up in the morning? Everything that meant anything just about was completely destroyed in the most horrific way possible. How do you get up in the morning? Well, Avraham Avinu taught us how. And
They
that's,
weren't the same after that event.
I'm sorry,
They were not the same after that event.
you know something? I don't know what the same means.
They
You're
weren't
right.
as they were when they went into it.
Okay, I don't know if Abraham was better or worse after the event.
No
I don't
one
know if
said better or
Yitzhak
worse.
was better or worse, but the reality is it shaped who they are.
Absolutely.
It shaped who they are.
Absolutely.
Good. Now,
Way to
what
look at
is, what, Sarah?
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's the way. I think it's the way. I think it's
I
good.
think that's the only way to look at it.
Yeah,
Because
I think so.
any religion can come ahead and say, our God said, let's.
Yeah, anybody who takes a little piece of anything out of anything is going to spin it any way he wants, which is doesn't have much to do with truth, you know.
The fool's errand.
Next, Gevurah, Yitzhak. Gevurah, as we know, means restraint, right? To want to do something, to feel like I want something, I want to do it, it's important to me, I crave it, I want it, I deserve it, whatever it might be, and to have the restraint to hold back. Third element, Yaakov, as we know, is emet. What does emet mean? A few of us learned it together. It means there's a certain path that's straight and narrow that no one could ever stay on, nor is anyone ever expected to stay on. But an honest person, a straightforward person, fights his way back to emet, fights his way back to God's objective truth throughout his or her life.
Like a heat-seeking
So,
missile.
what's that?
Like a heat-seeking missile.
Like a heat-seeking missile, exactly right. Like a heat-seeking missile. So, one of the premises of tonight's learning is that we want to remind ourselves of those yesodot, of those foundational elements articulated by the greatest of men, by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And those are Hesed, which means interconnectedness, Gevurah, which is not physical strength, but restraint, personal restraint, holding back, and Emet, and the ability to reclaim truth, even when I'm dragged off course. One more foundational element for tonight's learning, and then we'll move into the actual topic. And that is, and you guys tell me, what is Teshuvah Gemurah? What is Teshuvah Gemurah? As opposed to regular Teshuvah. Teshuvah Gemurah. What do you say? We all make regular Teshuvah, right? On a regular basis. Yeah? So what is, Hanamam calls out a special category of Teshuvah Gemurah. What is it?
Some fine.
Teshuvah, I don't know, Gemara means full.
Gemurah, like a final or what?
Sincere teshuvah.
Beautiful, Sonny. How does it become sincere?
I don't really know. I guess it's kind of like something where you tell yourself that this is it, and you're really admitting to something that you really.
But go further. Good. Go further. Come on. Teshuvah Gemurah.
When you forgive yourself, also.
What is it?
When you forgive yourself, also.
True. Good. Give me more. There's more.
Yeah.
And they forgive you. And
Does
they
it have to do with does it have to do with death? Does it have to do with dying in the last day? Or
No. Annie, how are you?
Can I
Nice
get
to
an
see
answer?
you. Wow, we got a lot of the family. How nice. Good to see you.
He's got it.
Good. Does
Is
it have
it-
to do with death? No.
You're about to commit the thing you want to do Shabbat for, and you stop yourself before you do it.
Say that again.
When you're about to commit the sin, let's say, and you stop yourself in your tracks, and
And
you
so,
don't do it, that counts.
beautiful. So let me flesh out what you said just a little bit, right? You have a person has stumbled in this area before, right? A person stumbled in this area before. Jake, you good? Person stumbled in this area before. Hakadosh Baruch Hu presents overwhelmingly similar circumstances. The person has the capacity to do the same thing and holds himself or herself back. Good? Right? Teshuvah Gemurah. I'm going to read you the words of the Rambam. Zeh shebali yado, a person that came to his hand. Davar she'avar bo, something that he had stumbled in the past. Ve'efshar la'asoto, and he has the physical, the financial means and wherewithal to transgress that thing again. U'peresh, and he separates himself. Lo asa mipnei teshuvah, and he doesn't do it. Why? Because he wants to make teshuvah. Good. That's the fourth foundational component that we're going to focus on tonight. So let me repeat them very quickly. A, the Torah. Sorry.
So, well, like, what's the difference of what you just said and Isaac's Gevorah?
Okay. The difference is beautiful. The difference is that Isaac would have been put in a position where he stumbled on something, and he had the capacity, and he uses his gevurah not to do it. So that would be a very specific case. All the elements line up similarly to what they did 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago when he stumbled in a certain area and did the wrong thing. He has the capacity to do it again, but he uses his gevurah to stop. Now, gevurah in general is something we use every day. And the classic term, to your point, to help flesh that out, and it's good, is to be parush min hamutar. What does it mean to be parush min hamutar? To be parush min hamutar. Separated from that which is allowed. What does that mean? Huh? Serene, what do you say? Parush min hamutar.
Separated from what is allowed.
That I separate myself from what I can do.
Everything's a choice?
Everything's a choice, but this plays to Sari's question. Sari wants a more of a clarification on gevurah. I'm saying that gevurah definitely was used for the person who's doing teshuvah gemurah, absolutely, a complete teshuvah. But gevurah is also used whenever I am parush, whenever I separate myself from something that's not halachically prohibited, but I don't want to be doing it. Why would a person do that? Why would a person be poresh min hamutar? Yes, honey.
If they know that it could be a weakness of theirs, if it's something
Beautiful, because I don't want to stumble. So that's where gevurah comes in, Sari, in a very big way. Halachically, this is okay to do. But I know myself, and I know that if I go there, I'm going to end up in a place that may not be halachically okay. And therefore, I'm going to put up my own fence. And that's where gevurah comes in the biggest way, where I'm honest enough with me to say, I'm not going to rationalize my behavior. I'm honest enough with me to say that if I keep going in this direction, even though I haven't hit that halachic boundary yet, I'm going to end up getting too close to it or breaking through it.
Is that like being mahmir on yourself?
Exactly. It's about knowing yourself. And there's nothing more integrous than that. How, it's so integrous to be able to say, you know what? I know me. I know what my weaknesses are. And I know if I hang around with that person, if I engage in this conversation, if I do this, even though it's absolutely 100% okay by halacha, knowing me, I know this person's going to push my button.
So yeah. Why is that considered a teshuvah? Isn't it just considered just avoiding a sin? Why is Hashem taking that as teshuvah?
No, he's not. I'm sorry. I want to be clear. He's not. I'm just giving another example of gevurah.
I'm saying in general, but the teshuvah gemurah is you're saying is if you're avoiding something, then you're going to.
That's not teshuvah gemurah. No, thank you. Okay. Teshuvah gemurah is only when I could have done something but didn't. So you're right. You're right. Avoiding something is teshuvah gemurah. Yes. Not the examples I use. In other words, let's say somebody stole from this store. Somebody walked into the store and he stole something, right? Okay, nothing happened, didn't get caught, whatever it was, but he stole something from the store. He walks into another store. That store closed down. He thinks about it. He says, oh man, I'm never going to be able to give the guy his money back. the store closed down, shopkeeper is gone. I can't make amends for this. That's a very heavy burden to pay. He realized to carry. He realized at a certain point along the way that he was ashamed of what he did and he wanted to fix it and he couldn't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? You have a sincere intention to fix that. I'm going to bring another store with another shopkeeper with a very similar ease to steal into your life. Maybe it's a week later, maybe it's 20 years later. And I'm going to allow you to walk through that store again with the same capacity to fill your pockets. And if you don't fill them, it would mean that the original action was fixed, that it was expunged, that you grew beyond it. That's
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, so that's only something that Hashem could decide.
Yes,
As-
and he'll only bring the circumstances back when a person wants to fix it.
Oh, okay.
We say chata'ai negdi tamid, right? I remember my stumblings. If a person rationalized it and forgot about it, then the person's not honest. There's really nowhere to go here. And God says, okay, look, when you get ready to clean up your act, I'm ready to talk to you. When you get ready, I'm ready. But for the person who says, oh man, I was 17 years old. I was under pressure financially, whatever it might be. I did what I did. I'm so ashamed of it. Chata'ai negdi tamid. That sin is in front of me. It's hanging on my heart. It's hanging on my heart. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is benevolent. He says, I'm going to bring a similar set of circumstances into your life where you will have the same opportunity and can make the same choice. And if you choose not to do what you did last time, I'm going to reach back into that and I'm going to pull the negative away and I'm going to recast it as a positive because you grew and you changed. And
So
that's
right. It's not just avoiding. So it's not just avoiding a sin. It's Hashem recognizing that you want to do teshuvah and then presenting you with an opportunity.
excellent. Avoiding a
Are
sin.
we supposed to recognize? Are we supposed to recognize this being presented to us
100%.
when it happens?
100%.
To say, I recognize this as my test.
100%.
Right.
And you got to say, thank you, God, for giving me the opportunity to clean up this lousy thing that I've been carrying around for 20 years.
So it really sounds like God is giving you a second chance.
Absolutely. Only if you want it.
Right. Only
Only if you want it. Now, the
What if you
point I was
fall?
making,
What if you fall the second time? Now you flop.
for a second time, you know something? It's a great question. Sometimes it takes 5 falls. Sometimes it does. And sometimes a person doesn't wake up until the 5th or the 6th or the whatever number. Sometimes that's the way it is. Thank God. Thank God that a person can still wake up after number 7, let's say. And if he wakes up after number 7 and he feels the pain or the shame of it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to carry it. He says, you know what? You're feeling it. Oh, what do you mean? You transgressed it 6 times already. It's who you are. No, it's not. If you're feeling it and you wish you can change it, I will give you the opportunity to change.
You can't really change everything. Some things are done and the opportunity never comes up again. It's not, you can never have that opportunity again.
I have to tell you, Serene, you know, there are things that we've all done, right? I raised my hand first. There are things that we've all done. And what I found in my life is when I carry that burden, not to a point where it's debilitating, because nobody's supposed to do that, but to a point where it hurts me a little, it ashames me a little. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you a second and third and fourth chance to fix it.
There are things though that you can do that are just not irrevocable. You can't take them back. I think that's what Serene means when she says that.
It's not really true. That's exactly.
God forbid somebody killed somebody, right? God forbid this. That's just something in this world we can't take back.
But
God forbid.
I want to be clear. We're not. It's not about taking it back. Hi, Abe. Good to see you. It's not about taking it back. It's not about taking it back. It's about growing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands that by design, everybody by design is supposed to be failing, is supposed to be the question is, who has the courage to face it? Most people, what do when they stumble? What do? We all do. What do? We rationalize it. We point a finger. We minimize it, right? We talk ourselves out of it. We let ourselves off the hook. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay. Huh?
Not after this class.
What?
Not after this class.
Good. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, look, for the courageous who don't do that, who really want to grow and want to become more, I don't want that person carrying pain year after year. So what am I going to do? I'm going to give him a chance to fix it. Somebody had an issue with his partners in business. Somebody had an issue with a friend. Somebody an issue with a teacher. There'll be another teacher. There'll be another partner set up. There'll be another friend. And there you'll start to say, oh man, this is deja vu all over again. There's something that seems very familiar here. What happened last time? And where do I need to be this time? And you know what? I want to be very clear on this. Sometimes you're going to, not you, we are going to fail in these things the second time and the third time and whatever time. But if there's an awareness and a wantingness to move beyond it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a commitment to us. I will give you the circumstances. And guess what? You blew it the second time, third time, fourth time, you'll have another. Don't give up on yourself until the very end, Hashem says. Because, it says, make teshuvah a minute before your last breath. A minute. What does that mean, make teshuvah a minute? It means I'm going to let you. I'm in it with you. I want you to. I want you to. Good? Okay? Beautiful. All right. That was our introduction. Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the story of the brothers, and we're going to start with some stuff that you guys are all very familiar with some answers that you're all very familiar with. So I'm going to move through them relatively quickly, the questions and the answers, because I want to focus on the core issues, which I think are less familiar. First of all, we know we have one very serious question, which is 22 years. Yosef is away from his dad. Okay, we understand there's a couple of years you can't reach dad. You can't call home, right? But the bulk of those 22 years you could. How could it possibly be that someone who was so close to his father didn't reach out to him? You've all heard the question before. You've heard a number of answers before. We'll talk about them. For now, keep the question. Question number 2. When Yosef HaSadik meets his brothers for the first time, what does he call them?
Meraglim.
Beautiful, beautiful. What does that mean? What does it mean, Meraglim? What is it?
Spy.
Spy. What is a spy? What's another word for a spy?
Traitor.
Give me another word for a traitor, because it's not exactly traitor. What's another word for a spy?
Tattletale.
Be secretive.
Secretive. What?
Somebody trying to extract information for somebody else.
Okay, a spy is duplicitous, right? Okay. A spy shows himself as one thing and is something else, right? That's really a spy. He presents himself as a citizen of the United States, and he's really a citizen of wherever, right? China, Russia.
Undercover agent.
A phony.
What's that?
Undercover agent.
Right, undercover agent. Great. Okay, it's duplicitous. Good. So Yosef HaSadik calls them Meraglim. He calls them duplicitous. He then throws Shimon in jail. And he then, after that, he puts the cup, his silver cup, in Binyamin's possession and calls him out as a crook. So, 22 years, no conversation with daddy. He knows his father must be suffering. He knows his father must be suffering, right? B, when he sees his brothers, he accuses them of something that's punishable by death. Guess what? As we know, in the ancient world, No trial, no jury. We have it in the modern world too, in some countries. So he labels them the most treacherous term you can, and knowing that in their minds right away, they realize that he could subject them to death that day, that minute. Next, he takes Shimon, throws him in jail, and finally, he calls out Binyamin. He gives the impression that Binyamin is a crook. Now, tell me, what are some of your thoughts on this episode? What's going on here? What was going on here?
I heard something that he was reenacting what happened to him when they first came. He called them spies to mirror that he used to spy on them, and then he put Shimon in jail in a pit the same way the brothers put him in a pit, and then putting the money in their sacks was like when Yosef got sold and they put money in their sacks when they made the sale. So it was like he was sort of repeating his whole episode.
Excellent. For what purpose?
The big reveal.
Right.
For what
payback.
purpose?
So the same
For
way
what?
you're saying, the Teshuvah,
Beautiful. So let's go step by step. First of all, were they duplicitous? The worst, right? It couldn't have been much worse than what they were. There you are, lying to your father to his face for 22 years. How could they possibly live with themselves? And Yehuda al Chad Kama v'Kama. He does it with his daughter-in-law Tamar. He fakes her twice. First by telling her he was going to give her third son Shelah, and then by cohabitating with her. So duplicitous, check, no question about it. Shimon, yes. To Serene's point, yes. You're going to throw people in a pit, in an ancient prison. We're going to do that to you as well. And the most interesting, I think, is the so-called thievery of Binyamin. Now, if you remember, who was the first Torah crook? And Sefer Beresheet. Who would you say was the first Torah thief? No, he broke idols. Who was the first crook?
Rachel.
Beautiful. Rachel. What did she steal?
Her father's idols.
She stole the teraphim of her dad, right? Of Laban. Rachel is the first Torah crook, right? She's the first one. Now, the Midrash says a very interesting thing. The Midrash says that when Binyamin was accused of stealing the silver cup, what did his brothers say to him?
You're like your mother.
Beauty. Look at you, just like mom. She was a crook and you're a crook. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. Now, the Midrash fills in a little bit here by saying Binyamin and Yosef were one and the same to these guys. Why? Why were they one and the same to the brothers? Because the same mother, the favorite mother, same favored mother. So, okay, we got rid of Yosef, but we still have a threat in Binyamin. He's the same threat. He still loved her more than mom, and he still favored her. And if Yosef is not around to get the treatment, Binyamin certainly will. And they weren't so wrong. They weren't so wrong. So, if Yosef reached out to dad at any time during the 22 years, this process would have been short-circuited, right? He needed to call them out, to Serene's point, he needed to call them out as duplicitous, as phonies, as spies. He needed to do it. Had he let them know that he was alive in Egypt, what are we doing? How are we doing this? We don't have the circumstances set up to do it. Now, parenthetically, it's important to note that our rabbis say that Yitzhak Avinu, right, Yaakov's father and Yosef's grandfather, knew he was alive, but didn't tell Yaakov either. Yitzhak knew he was alive, doesn't tell his son, because Yitzchak, through his prophecy, knew that something had to be fixed. And sometimes it takes a generation to fix something. So they had to be called out for the people they were. And they were absolutely duplicitous. They were absolutely phonies. No question about it. They were spies in a real sense. B, they had to have the opportunity, as Jamie said, to attempt to make Teshuvah Gemurah. And how would they do that? By taking brother number 2, the son of mother the thief, and saving him. And the Midrash says that when they caught him, when Yosef caught him, so to speak, with his silver vessel, they called him Ganav ben Ganav. They called him thief, the son of a thief. They called him that. So they could have fallen right back into, they can't stand him anyway. He's an existential threat to them. They could have fallen right back into that process that happened before and done the same thing to him. But what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? And he uses, so to speak, or partners with Yosef to do it. He fashions the opportunity for Teshuvah Gemurah. He fashions the circumstances for them to be placed with overwhelmingly the same circumstances and see what they do. And the guy who was maybe one of the worst of them, Shimon, steps off the stage. The guy who enabled them, Yehuda, becomes the leader to fix it. And the only way they could fix themselves was with a process like this. Now, okay, it's nice. Nice answer. But you got to tell me I'm not satisfied.
I have a quick question. Why does Yosef feel the need, or why does he have the obligation to create those circumstances for them?
Fantastic, Jake. Fantastic, honey. Fantastic. That's exactly the next point. When it says in Parashat Vayeshev, Ele Toldot Yaakov Yosef, for some reason, Yaakov has 12 sons and a daughter, and this is the person who was his lineage, his essence. Ele Toldot. This is the future. This is the furtherance of Yaakov is Yosef. Now, it gets further when he tells Yosef to go check out his brothers. Remember that story? When the brothers go to Dotan or in that direction, and Yaakov tells Yosef, how old was he at the time? He was 17. He tells him, Lechna re'eh et shlom achecha. Go see if your brothers are in peace. What are you talking about? He's a kid. He's a baby. What he's seeing, what could he see? The only way you can understand what he could see is if you look at the word shalom as it's applied to Pinchas HaKohen later on. When we have the issue in Sde Moav, where the Moabite women are running around with the Jewish men, and we have Pinchas goes and he spears Cozbi and Zimri. He takes out the 2 leaders, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. I'm giving him my personal covenant, my personal treaty of inner peace. Shalom means inner peace. That's the only way you can understand what Yaakov was doing. Somehow, Yaakov, I think unbeknownst to himself, sends Yosef to check, are they at shalom? You little 17-year-old kid, check. Were they at shalom? Of course they weren't. But Ele Toldot Yaakov Yosef, the furtherance of Yaakov is Yosef. Yosef had the job to finish what Yaakov started. Why? And here's clincher number 1. And then we're going to talk about a couple other points and wind up.
He never fixed it with Esav. He never fixed it with Esav.
Beautiful. He didn't fix it. And why does he have to fix it with them? Yitzchak didn't fix it with Esav, right? Why does Yaakov have
I'm saying Yaakov didn't fix it with Esav. His brother.
Fixed it with Esav by choice, right? Never fixes
Right.
it. And we're still living that today, right? We're still living through that thing. What now? What was at risk here? What really was broken? What was broken? Go back to some of the things that we mentioned in the beginning, in the early stages of the foundational points for the class.
Of the chesed.
Beautiful, beautiful. What was broken? Everything was broken. Chesed, that everything is interconnected, that we're all responsible for each other on some level, that level of zikuk, that level of connectedness is absolute, certainly to the world in general, but most certainly to your own family, gone, finished, gone, wiped out Avraham. The brothers wipe out Avraham. Had this not happened, none of us would be here. Bet, what else did they wipe out? What else? What did Yitzchak stand for? Gevurah, right? Restraint. He stood for Gevurah. Did they restrain themselves? Hitnaklu amito. They were planning to kill him. What are you talking about? How off could he have been? He was 17. How off could he have been? Did they restrain their jealousy? Did they restrain their anger? Did they restrain whatever was going on? Absolutely not. Strike, wipe out Yitzchak. And finally, the most obvious, their father, Yaakov, who stands for Emet, who says that nobody's perfect, but we all fight to get our way back, the guided missile, in Zeke's terms. Were they there? Absolutely not. So what was at stake here? Everything. And Ele Toldot Yaakov Yosef means that if Yosef doesn't come along to Serene's point and pick it up and finish the job in his Tamimut, with having an inkling, a sense of something, because he had those prophetic dreams, but not realizing, impossible to realize at the time, where it would take him. And somehow Yaakov himself, when he tells him, go see the shalom of your brothers, there was no shalom. They were completely off track. He sensed it. He didn't know what to do about it. He needed Yosef to finish it. And they had to pay. And they had to be in pain. And it had to be a 22-year experience. And it couldn't happen any other way. And that, I believe, is the only way to, not only way, a very important way to understand this whole mahalach.
So I mean, I hear what you're saying, but we could go back to day one with Cain and Hevel. We could do Yitzhak and Ishmael. We could do Yaakov and Esau. Every story repeated.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic point. And you know what, Sarah? That's what we're going to do next time. That's what we're going to do next time. It's a great point. It's a great point. It's a great point. We're going to drive all the way back because I'd love to do that. I didn't think about it, but I'd love to do that. Let's go all the way back and see how much of that was corrected here and how much remains open. Because we know we haven't corrected it all, right? We didn't get back to Gan Eden yet.
No.
Hope to at some point in time. We're working to. So it's a fascinating question. And what I would say is that we did enough. By the way, we say we did enough to enable the Jewish people to become a people, to come into being. But we didn't do enough to bring Mashiach. We didn't do enough to get back to Gan Eden. We didn't do enough to get to Tchiyat HaMetim. We didn't. So you're absolutely right. So we corrected one major chapter, but we did not correct the whole package. It's a fabulous point. And we got to leave that for another one. But we will. It's a great one. I want to mention a couple of other things. We mentioned last week that and we'll wrap up with this. Actually 3 more points. We mentioned last week that there are different levels of hashgacha, of divine providence, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will grant somebody. And we said that with Yehuda Maccabi and his children, he was convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's divine providence as related to him and his children can be taken so far as depend on a miracle because we're going to get it. And we questioned that. And what we came up with was that when someone is willing to sacrifice for something, truly sacrifice, give something up, as Yehuda and his children were, they were willing to sacrifice their lives. When someone is willing to sacrifice, he can be dependent on a miracle. He can feel confident that if he goes that far to build something in Torah or Judaism, there's a real good possibility that a miracle will happen. Good. We said that in order to facilitate that, there are a couple of core elements, one of which is process. It's process. And Rabbi Tala from the Yeshiva Flatbush High School told me a fantastic thing a number of years ago when I was teaching there. He said, Ricky, you want to look at the growth of someone you're going to teach? Look at it over a 20-year time period. So I was 30 years old. I thought he was crazy. I said, what are you talking about? 20 years? Because you want to see the growth of a person? Look at that person over a 20-year time period. And it's true. So when you look at stuff like this, where you want to define a family, where you want to define a community, where you want to define a people, look at it in terms of decades and generations. And we as parents and some of us grandparents, sometimes we say, I wish I did this. I wish I had the sensitivity to give my child that. I wish I had the opportunity to give my child that. 1 second, 22 years, Yaakov and his brother and his sons, off as could be, essentially trashed everything that the Torah was built on. But guess what? 22 years, they got it back. It's not over till it's over. The last chapter is not written. You didn't have a certain sensibility to give your child X, do it now. You didn't build value Y, do it now. You didn't do something with your parent, do it now. Oh, too much time. Now, 22 years, everything basically broken. The fundamentals broken, they grabbed them back. That's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two. The last parasha, this week's parasha, Vayhi, is very interesting because Yaakov Avinu details the trajectory of each of his sons. And what's most noteworthy, as you know, is that they're all so different. Every one of them is different. And there's a very important message there also, a very important message. And that is that, they say that they didn't give Yaakov the full vision. And maybe they didn't give him the full vision because maybe he wanted everybody to be the same. And the greatness of a family, of a community, of Judaism is the differences. And unity only comes from difference and distinction. Unity will never come from sameness. It only comes from difference and distinction. So what we want to do with our children, we want them to have the overarching core values that we have, of course, but we want them to build their difference and distinction. It's very, very important. And we think that might compromise the unity in the family. On the contrary, unity comes from distinction and difference, as Yaakov Avinu prophesied in this parasha. And last point, and then we'll open for some questions and wrap it up, is somebody taught me something, and Jamie and I spoke about it a number of times, a number of years ago. Somebody taught me something very, very valuable. And I think it's going to sound a little gumpy, so I apologize for that, but it isn't. I think it's a very serious point and a very important point for those of us who have relationships that are very important to us. And he said that there's an absolute distinction between love and happy love. Love and happy love. Comment on that. What do you think the difference is? Between a husband and wife, between a parent and child, what is the difference?
One is an obligation.
What's that? Love is an obligation.
No,
Yeah.
one of them is an obligation, the other one isn't.
Being content.
What's that?
Content.
Being content. But tell me the upshot of it, the impact. What's the impactful difference between love and happy love?
Happy, I would say the happy piece is optional to a certain
The
extent.
happy piece is optional, good. And what's the upshot from it? What is the, let me phrase it differently because I'm not being clear. How does God respond differently to love versus happy love?
I would say happy love is more active.
And we'll do what? You're right, Jake. We'll do what? Go a little
Make
further.
the other person feel more special.
For sure. But tell me how God responds differently to happy love.
I think it's good relationship.
Right?
Good relationship.
Beautiful. Good relationship. Super. Now, how does God react differently to we have marriages that are a loving marriage, and then you have marriages where the love is happy. Yeah, sorry. Unmute. Yeah.
I feel like happy love might be like someone that will go to the end to do something. And honestly, I don't even know if it has anything to do with God. I think it has something to do with that within, with themselves, their own desire. So.
Well, what about happy love being simply funnier and more laughter and more good times? What about that? How do you feel about that? Huh?
I think it's great.
Right. And what this person taught me, and I believe it's part of what had to be corrected with Yaakov and his children, is that the beracha that comes with love is very real, but the beracha that comes with happy love is many times greater. And when it says Vayechi Yaakov, our rabbis say that those were the happiest years of his life. What are you talking about? He's out of the land of Israel. How could it be? Well, 1 second. His family was together. They were together again. Let's assume that there was laughter again. So what does happy love mean on the most basic level?
Fulfilling?
It means, no, I want it to be even more basic. On the most basic level, it means that we laugh more together. As Flora said, we laughing more together. We're having more fun together. And that's an effort. That's a real thing. It's good to love a person, and that love brings God's shefa and beracha. But a happy love is infinitely more powerful and draws much greater attention and blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That we believe fundamentally in Judaism. And for those of us who have, thank God, we have spouses and children and grandchildren, and to make those loves that we all feel so deeply and so naturally, to make them happier is a very core Jewish value. And what this person taught me was that happy love brings beracha. And it should be top of mind for all of us. And I believe that one of the corrections maybe that was made between Yaakov and his children and they and themselves was to bring back a happy love that couldn't possibly have been there during those years of duplicitousness and all of that. So a lot of important lessons, Beresheet takeaways, very practical. We built back and reminded ourselves of some very core, important, foundational points in Judaism, and hopefully took some life lessons. Good. Any
Very
thoughts,
good.
questions?
Very, very nice.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. All right. It's good to see everybody. Thank you
too.
all.
Thank you, Ricky.
Bye.
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 Thank
Hey,
you.
sweetheart.
Take
Thank you,
care. All the
sweetheart.
best. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.